In the eyes of ordinary people, this is just an ordinary stone, but upon closer observation, it can be seen that this stone can reveal a dazzling sun through the cloudy sky. He is a legend in Nordic history. On the battlefields of the eastern Baltic Sea in the Middle Ages, Ragnar Lothbrok is cleaning the battlefield. This is a land that believes in the king of gods, Odin. Here, there is a group of Vikings who are skilled in navigation and brave in battle. They are naturally fierce and warlike, burning, killing, and plundering everywhere. So they are called Nordic pirates. From the 8th to the 11th century AD, it was the most famous Viking age in European history, and Ragnar Lothbrok was the famous Viking leader. Ragnar lived in a Viking tribe in Denmark. He had a happy and harmonious family. Ragnar's wife was beautiful, and they had 2 obedient and sensible children. At this time, he was just an ordinary farmer and warrior, but he had his own land. But Ragnar didn't want to live this peaceful life, because the blood of battle flowed in his veins. The next day was a public meeting held by tribal leaders. Ragnar wanted to take his 12-year-old son to participate, but his wife thought their son was still too young. However, Ragnar didn't think so. He thinks that a man should let him go out and see more of the outside world. Helplessly, law.The could only agree. On the way, Bjorn asked what the public meeting was about. Ragnar told him that the council mainly dealt with some criminal matters and discussed the summer raids. The Vikings lived in a place with scarce farmland and long winters, so their resources were extremely limited. They had to rely on plundering surrounding countries to survive. Since the ships for sailing were owned by leaders, it was the Lord's decision where to raid. According to past practice, the Count will definitely send them to Russia in the east, but Ragnar wanted to go to unknown and mysterious and wealthy lands, the west. Finally, the father and son arrived at the coastal town where the leader was located. Here, Ragnar met his brother. In the tavern, Ragnar told Rollo about his plan. He told Rollo that he was going to the west. Rollo told him they couldn't sail in the open ocean, but Ragnar said he had a way to go to the west.
I believe there's a way to go west.
And then he took out a package.
Using this, it needs to sit in water.
Rollo questioned if without the sun, it would lose its effect. So Ragnar took out a stone and took Rollo outside. Through this stone they can clearly see the dazzling sun behind the dark clouds. The council was held as scheduled, and Count Haraldsson finally appeared amidst cheers from the crowd. In the Vikings tribe, Earl Haraldsson represented the law and had the power of life and death. This council is to punish 2 prisoners, 1 thief and 1 murderer. As punishment for stealing, Olaf Anwind would be pelted by people on the gravel road, and Eric Tryggvason will have his head cut off directly for murder. Bjorn expressed his doubts as he looked at Tryggvason.
He wants to die well, without fear, to atone for his sins.
Then the Count ordered his men to take Tryggvason's head to feed the pigs, and cursed his soul never to enter Valhalla, not to follow the gods. This is the most malicious curse in Viking culture, as they believe that souls will enter Valhalla after death. So for Vikings, this is the most vicious curse. At this point, Rollo said that this was because the Count wanted to take possession of that piece of land, and Tryggvason was the most qualified person to get that land. At the end of the punishment, the Earl of Haraldsson will put armed bands on boys who have reached the age of 12. This symbolizes their loyalty to the Lord and is the main reason why Vikings are so united. After the coming-of-age ceremony, Ragnar asked Earl Haraldsson at an inappropriate time where they will raid this summer. The Lord said they will raid the eastern lands again and enter Russia. Ragnar said they go to the same place every year, and there is nothing worth looting there anymore.
Choice, yes. I've heard of these rumors, these stories, that if we travel west, that we will somehow reach a land that is rich and plentiful. But I tell you that I will not risk my ships or my reputation on such a deluded fantasy. They're my ships. I pay for them, and they go where I tell them to go. Now that's the end of the matter.
Ragnar stopped talking. Later, the Lord found Ragnar alone and warned him that he was just a farmer and should be content with the land he got.
You insulted me out there, and not for the first time. But believe me, it will be the last.
The Lord noticed Ragnar's dissatisfied look and knew he wouldn't give up easily, so he had his men keep an eye on him. As expected, after the council ended, Ragnar took his son to the deep mountains and found Floki. Floki is exceptionally talented and obsessed with shipbuilding. He can determine which part of a tree is suitable for shipbuilding just by looking at its trunk. However, due to strict control over private shipbuilding by the Lord, he has not been able to build a single ship. But Ragnar believes in him and uses all his savings to help Floki fulfill his dream. Of course, this is also for Ragnar to fulfill his dream of going to the Western world. Soon after, the boat Floki built was finally completed. Ragnar is extremely excited to see such a great work, but Floki is uneasy.
Set the sail.
Floki! The sail!
She'll sink.
No, she bloody won't.
You could have pretended to build such a boat. It's beyond my humble capabilities. I'll set the sail. I'm sorry, Ragnar. I've wasted all your money. It was all a joke.
Shut up, man.
When they set sail with the ship, Floki can no longer suppress his inner excitement.
Beautiful. Why didn't you believe me? I told you I could do it!
However, they are unaware that the Lord's men are quietly watching them from the shore. While Ragnar was not at home, two gangsters broke into his house and planned to do evil to law.The. But law.The. didn't panic. She asked Gaida to leave first.
If you're thirsty, I will give you a drink. If you're hungry, I will feed you. Otherwise, you must go.
We will eat and drink after we've satisfied our other needs.
law.The. then turned and picked up the stove iron in the fireplace. What they don't know is that they have provoked an extraordinary woman. Before getting married, law.The. was a Viking warrior, and in the future, she will become a woman who will make the whole of Europe tremble. In the evening, Ragnar and Bjorn finally return home, and Rollo also comes to their house. During dinner, Rollo talks to Gaida about Lagertha's past heroic deeds.
Your mother was a famous shield maiden.
Was?
Is a famous shield maiden.
And his eyes are always on law.The. After dinner, Rollo and Ragnar discuss their plans to raid the West. Now that they have ships, they lack crew members. In a tribe like the Vikings, where loyalty is paramount, not many people would go against their lord's wishes and choose to go on an adventure with them. There may even be some who will go to the lords to inform and betray them. But Ragnar is not worried at all. It seems that he has already figured out a solution in his heart. Just after he left the house, Rollo walked into law.The.
Yesterday I was with a girl from the town.
Thank you.
Good-looking girl, too. Didn't see her face. Saw yours.
Don't talk like that.
Why not? I think about you all the time.
That's too bad.
Don't insult me, shield maiden.
No, I would never insult you. You're too great a warrior, but perhaps not so great a man.
On the other hand, the Lord's men told the Lord about Ragnar's brother's plan to go out to sea privately. Unexpectedly, the Lord did not take action, but chose to wait and see. During the conversation, the Lord noticed that he had been staring at his wife. Then he stood up and said to his subordinates that if his wife wanted to be with him, he would arrange everything. When he returned home, he found a woman lying on the bed, and this person was the Countess. He thought this was the Lord's reward for him, so he quickly climbed into bed.
Woman like me, I'm an Earl's wife.
Take it. Yes, Lord.
And the Count would do this just because he wanted to know whether he was loyal to him. At the same time, with Eric's help, Ragnar secretly gathered many young men to join their team. They swore an oath with arm rings, vowing not to reveal their plan to go west to outsiders. At the same time, Ragnar promised everyone to share the loot equally. Everyone joined his expedition, and they decided to set off in a few weeks. However, law.The. was very displeased with this. This may be the most exciting voyage of their lives. Lagshaw wanted to go with her husband, but Ragnar refused. He told law.The. that this voyage was very dangerous, and they didn't know what would happen. Everything was unknown. He would never let his wife take risks with him, especially since they had 2 children at home who needed care. If something happened to them, their children would have no one to take care of them. At night, law.The. picked up her shield and challenged Ragnar.
Am I not good enough for you? Did you remember? I saved your life.
Fortunately, Bjorn pulled them apart in time to stop them from fighting. She knew Ragnar wouldn't let her sail with him, so law.The. had to give up. A few weeks later, everyone was ready to go and set off into the unknown Western world. Thus, the Viking Age, which lasted for 300 years, officially began. The pirates set sail with a few crows on their long journey because crows can save the lives of the entire crew at critical moments.
If the birds do not return, there is land.
Just a few days ago, Ragnar gathered more than 20 young men to prepare for a robbery in the west. In that era, no one knew if there were any kingdoms in the west, but there were rumors that it was a beautiful place full of gold. For this dream, Ragnar took the risk and set off towards the unknown western world. Of course, Ragnar was also prepared. At noon, he placed a sundial in the water. The shadow is shortest at noon. The sundial determines the direction of navigation based on the length of the shadow. If the shadow is exactly on the first circle, it means they are heading west. Otherwise, they have to adjust the direction of the ship. But at night, there was a fierce storm at sea with thunder and lightning. They had to lower the sails and continue rowing with oars. That night, they endured the baptism of the storm and huge waves. However, the Viking warriors were not at all afraid in the face of these hardships.
It's my boat, and the gods love my boat. Why should I not be happy?
Remember, you can't swim!
The storm finally ended the next day, but a thick fog covered the entire sea, making it difficult to see. The sundial and sunstone were rendered useless. The crew began to lose hope and blamed Ragnar. One of the crew members angrily said they were deceived by Ragnar, and there were no countries in the west. They were on the road to death.
We have been persuaded by madmen and fools. The god Loki is behind this voyage. That scoundrel. That sly one. Trouble and suffering are meat and drink to him.
Ragnar would never allow this pessimistic mood to spread. He went straight to the man and stabbed him in the throat. Now, they could only rely on the crows. They released the crows, and if they couldn't find a place to rest on the sea, they would fly back on their own. If they found land, they would never fly back. They used this characteristic to determine if there was land nearby. Several hours passed, and Ragnar prayed that the crows would not come back. But the next second, they heard the sound of birds in the sky.
Come back. There's no land.
In their despair, the crew felt that something was wrong. It was the sound of seagulls. They looked up and saw seagulls soaring in the sky. Seagulls usually inhabit the rocky beaches of the coast and islands, which meant that there must be land nearby. On the other side, the monks on the shore saw the pirate ship approaching and hurriedly ran back to the monastery to report. This is England's Northumbria territory. At that time, monasteries were built on the coast and in some town centers without any defensive measures. After receiving the news, the priest immediately ordered the gates to be closed, but it was already too late. The Vikings were sharpening their blades on the coast. Before leaving, Ragnar instructed everyone to only rob and not kill. However, when they broke into the monastery, the monks were in a panic. The priest was still devoutly praying. Rollo brutally killed the priest. And the other Vikings started a ruthless massacre. Because Ragnar had promised equality to everyone before, he couldn't stop them and could only take the kind-hearted people to search for money and treasures. They arrived at a house where treasures were generously displayed. They made fun of how the monks placed their treasures so confidently. Ragnar answered that maybe they thought God was protecting them. One man sarcastically pointed at Jesus, saying that he was already dead. Another man said that he died just like Odin. Suddenly, Ragnar heard a noise from behind the cabinet. When he pulled it out, it turned out to be a local monk who could speak the Viking language. Ragnar threatened him and asked why he could speak the Viking language. The monk's name was Athelstan, and he explained that they traveled around and preached the way of God. He had been to the land of the Vikings. Ragnar had no intention of killing him and kept him for possible use in the future. At this moment, Rollo burst in. He disregarded everyone's attempts to stop him and tried to kill the monk. Fortunately, Ragnar stopped him.
We are all equals.
Does it really mean that much to you, brother?
But Rollo was very angry and destroyed the crucifix, mocking Athelstan's beliefs. Athelstan was taken away by the pirates along with a large amount of gold treasures. Everyone returned with a full load and set sail back. Ragnar asked Athelstan how large England was. Athelstan truthfully replied that the place they inhabited was just a small island within one of the 4 major kingdoms of England. and it was a monastery. Ragnar's eyes instantly filled with desire and ambition. A few days later, the group successfully returned home. The shore was crowded with people eagerly awaiting their triumphant return. At that moment, Earl sent men to take Ragnar away. He accused Ragnar of disobeying orders and venturing out to sea on his own. As punishment, he allowed each person to choose only one item from the treasure. It wasn't just because of Ragnar's greed. Earl wanted to assert his authority. He could sense that Ragnar was becoming a threat to his position in the hearts of the people. Everyone watched as Ragnar made his choice. Surprisingly, among all the treasures, Ragnar selected Athelstan to be his slave. Ragnar's decision sparked laughter from the crowd. On the surface, it seemed like a foolish choice. However, Ragnar knew that Athelstan's knowledge of the Western world could greatly facilitate his future expeditions. Moreover, by choosing Athelstan, he could minimize the threat to Earl. Ragnar brought Athelstan home and introduced him to his family. The children were curious about this foreigner. Lager eagerly pulled her husband into a room, while Athelstan listened attentively from the neighboring room. He began to feel troubled and started reciting the Bible. Surprisingly, Ragnar extended an invitation to Athelstan.